The commons are the cultural and natural resources accessible to all members of a society, including natural materials such as air, water, and a habitable earth. These resources are held in common, not owned privately. Commons can also be understood as natural resources that groups of people, such as communities or user groups, manage for individual and collective benefit. Characteristically, this involves a variety of informal norms and values, such as social practice, employed for a governance mechanism. The resilient development against the backdrop of large-scale transition in Sisophon, Cambodia. The approach of the research phase is characterized by a strong interest in the differences between the urban fabric, social aspects, and the behavior of the inhabitants in the public space of the Sisophon city in Cambodia. We will look at three maps of the city in order to observe the urban development among the years. The first map represents the city in 1985, highlighting the undeveloped areas. The second map represents the city in 2000, highlighting the new development and infrastructure spots. The third map represents the city in 2016 with new connections all around it. The city has still place to develop horizontally, but probably in the near future it will face a densification of the existing urban fabric. To understand better the urban fabric, a comparison between a developed city, a hybrid city, and an informal city will be made. We will focus on the grid fragment of Sisophon for this comparison. The city combines the plan metrics of the streets with the organic metrics of the build. The map represents the aspects of urbanism, emphasizing building types, thoroughfares, open spaces, frontages, and streetscapes. We can observe that Sisophon has influences from both developed planned metrics and organic informal metrics, characteristics that let us name it as a hybrid city. In Hybrid Cities, a Basis for Hope, written by Geta and Rajesh Pradhan, they are saying that a hybrid city seeks to offer a new model of development, a hybrid approach that combines the best of rural and urban attributes to create a village in a city in a village. Combining best features of city and country life in one place can create the diversity and sense of community needed to nurture creativity and innovation. If we take a closer look to the internal organization of the daily life of Sisophon inhabitants, we have a lot to learn from. The types of activities taking place in the commons are the key to a further development and upgrade of the city. An analysis of the existing interventions could direct us to new proposals, strategies, and even a guideline for future interventions, keeping the genius low-key. Here are some examples from how inhabitants are using the commons. They are drying the rice on the street, deposit construction materials, eat and unwind under the roofs of the sheds, let animals graze wherever there is food, sell and buy from the small shops in the neighborhood. To localize these activities, we will make a south-north section of the studied grid area and see which are the differences between the streets. We can easily observe that from north to south, the character of the streets is becoming more rural, and so are the activities in the commons. The streets near the main road of the city are more developed and more commercial activities are taking place. Moving further to the south, more rural aspects are appearing on the grid, such as vegetable gardens and animal grazing. We will find also small interventions for different activities created by the inhabitants and used as a common. These small interventions can be found all over the world as sheds, arbors, canopies, and pavilions. An arbor is a shady garden alcove with the sides and roof formed by trees or climbing plants trained over a framework. A pavilion is a summer house or the decorative building used as a shelter in a park or a large garden. A shed is a simple roofed structure used for garden storage to shelter animals or as a workshop. A canopy is a roof-like projection or shelter. Here are a few examples of the small interventions identified along the streets. The map of the interventions shows us how they are placed perpendicular on one of the main streets of the city. Wealthy people around the city are starting to create concrete platforms in front of their houses, appropriating the commons in a non-sustainable way for the community. What we try to do is to avoid that this will happen in the further development of the city. The aims of the design proposal are to create a more resilient and diverse urban-rural landscape, enhance the rural-urban relations, and stimulate sharing and collaboration in the communities. We can achieve this by generating a recreation system by using the streets for different activities, promote interaction on the street by linking the commons in one network working system. We can also boost actual interventions by creating a pleasant and sustainable architecture, creating flexible structures that can be appropriated by the inhabitants based on their needs. But how to begin the process of developing the commons? We can implement a project by stimulating the local community, by giving them opportunities to improve their daily life, placing the commons at the forefront of the resilience process. We can use two approaches. Top-down, everything starts from a big NGO in collaboration with a design team that is training the local NGOs about how to implement these projects in the community. The local NGO will mediate between the NGOs and the local government in order to receive material support. A bottom-up approach is everything starts from the community that asks the local NGOs for support. The local NGOs are training the community and are also mediating between the community and the local government. Without a design team, the community together with the local NGOs can recruit volunteers and start making their self-built interventions with their own resources and their own management. Further on, two scenarios will be presented. The first scenario is how the commons can be developed on a street if the density grows and this street is closer to an urban area of the city. And the second scenario is how the commons can be developed on a street if the density grows and the street is closer to a more rural area of the city. There are already good examples of commons in Sisophon. Here are three of them showing how the basis of what can be a further development of the commons already exists. The street with less shadow can be used for drying the rice. Streets with dense vegetation and a strong rural aspect can be used for a further community garden along the street. Streets with a large number of commerce activities can become shopping streets. As a conclusion, protecting and developing the good use of the commons, creating equitable relations between people, and fighting against the concrete platforms, we will embrace the ability to not only adopt in the face of a further development of the city, but to adopt the tools of the present to strengthen our communities in preparation for the future. Thank you.